Yeah, so for me, dude, it's like I want to chat with everyone today really about like, I mean, it's what, March 30th today. So here we are at the end of the first quarter. I kind of want to talk strategic plans and like how that correlates into your marketing, obviously, as well as, having a legitimate strategic plan correlates with the rest of the business as well. But more so, at the end of it, I'll kind of tie it up in why you need a strategic plan, what it's going to do, and how it affects, the marketing segue or sector of the business specifically. So I mean, any high level things that we need to touch on, or you want me to kind of just jump in right there with both feet?
Dude, you can definitely jump in with both feet, man. I think, creating a plan is so important and, all goes into like goals and what you want to accomplish and those types of things. And, one of my favorite quotes when it comes to like planning, right, is that you can't punch anywhere in a GPS and plan to get there, right? Literally,
Yeah.
I've tried it. There's no such thing as a place called anywhere.
Yeah.
So, ultimately, I think that building a strategic plan is like your ultimate holy grail to growing, right? And really
Yeah.
being able to use your plan and where you're at and be able to pivot, right? Adjust and those types of things. So I think it's super important, Cody.
Yeah. And so like for me, at least that it's, core, it's like a strategic plan really does two things. Okay. So it drives high expectations and high activity. And then it should also like drive a high connection and culture within your business. And a lot of guys are like, how would a strategic plan, affect the culture of my business? Right. This is conversations that I've had in the past. And to me, it's like, you know, the way that it does do that, the way that it affects the culture of your business is it gives people, it lets them see where you're going, and not only like where you're going as an organization, but like the roadmap for getting there, kind of to the point you just made about like the reference to the GPS. And what I see in most of the guys that are in here and that we're working with in general, we've worked with in the past, is that their organizations usually have one of those two things, right? So they either have the high expectations, high productivity, like they're selling a lot, but like usually there's not this big like brothers in arms type culture there, or it's the opposite, which I've seen this personally in my business, in my old roofing company in the past for a very short stint, was that we had the highest connection and culture, but I felt like it was a hangout spot, right? Like it almost felt like the office was like, it was the place to be. And I'm like, what the hell are we doing here? Like, are we making money today? And so like,
People get
I
good
think,
at avoiding what they need to do, right? And like I
yeah,
think culture is such a crucial part of a company's success, but I do feel like sometimes those lines get so blurred, man, between like friend and like we got shit to do. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
it
So
does happen.
I couldn't stand it, man. It'd be like 2 o'clock and a sales rep would start rolling in the office. I'm like, bro, where are you? What are you doing, man? He's like, I just want to come hang out with you. I'm like, dude, I love you, man, but like we can hang out after. Like, go get you some
Yes.
money. Go get some
Yeah.
money moves in there.
Yeah, and it's like I made a post about this on social media the other day, and I kind of explained like the first job I ever had, like ever, was I was probably 14, 15, 16, somewhere in that vicinity, and totally off the books, right? I had a buddy, and his parents knew someone that owned a roofing company, and basically my buddy Jeff, the one that his parents hooked me up with this, like he was like, hey, this guy needs us to go do some cleanup. He owns a construction company, and I knew nothing about construction. I knew nothing about knew nothing about roofing specifically. I was 15-year-old kid, and I'm like, hell yeah, I'll go work for $7 an hour or $8 an hour or whatever it was. And when we got there, of course, I wasn't aware of this at that point in time, but like looking back and reflecting, like it was all about expectations and high productivity to those guys. They did not give a shit about me. Like all they saw was, oh, cool, we don't have to, pick up all the shingle. We don't have to pick up this 30 square of shingles off the ground after we do the tear off today, right? And like I'm pretty sure like the guy that actually ran that crew, he was like a legitimate slave driver. So the work sucked. The nonstop hustle of that day sucked. The guys on the team that just saw me as like an in shape 15-year-old kid, and my buddy is the same. Like those dudes suck. But if I like I hone in on that one job, like we were out of there, and knowing what I know now, it was probably 30 to 40 square roof. We were out there by like 3 o'clock, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so what does that say? Like it shows that like we had the productivity, high activity, and we got shit done. But I freaking hated it the whole time I was there, and there I wasn't having a good time. So like thank God it was short lived, right? It was a one time occurrence for me. But then secondary to that, my actual like first real job on the books, like doing things the right way, getting paid as a W-2, was at Dairy Queen, right? So I was a Blizzard tech,
Dude,
pretty
I love me some DQ, man.
yeah. And like I couldn't work through the week, so I took a weekend job there at Dairy Queen just with sports and stuff. And the cool thing about working at Dairy Queen was it was the exact opposite of working for Dog and the other guys that were on his crew. And there were like zero expectations, right? We were all 15, anywhere from I guess I was 16 at that point. So 16 to probably 20 years old. The culture was awesome. We had so much fun. We, we're in the freezer, like eating half the inventory, probably, like giving away free ice cream to our friends, like joking, like there were, pretty girls there. And like, it was just like the best time ever. And so, like I said, we had a ton of fun, but we got essentially nothing done. And like, I'm honestly surprised that Dairy Queen survived, the 6 or 7 of us that work there. But it's like, to get to the point, it's like it was extreme opposites, right? So we had, the high productivity over here of the roofing guys we did some roofing with. We had zero productivity and high culture over here. But then it's like I got to experience both just a few years later, right? So joined the Air Force, a couple years later, and from day one, we had the highest expectations and productivity because they don't let you sleep for literally the first week that you're there, right? Like I probably have 4 hours of sleep, and you get a lot of shit done when you don't actually take any time out to sleep. So then it's like, but we also they built you up with camaraderie, and you felt like a team, and it was just like one of the best cultures that I had ever had, or of any team I'd been a part of. So in my opinion, that bond, like number one, the productivity was there because the expectations were given to us on day one. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. This is what you're here to do. And then the bond of the culture was formed from the intentionality, having that structure that I just talked about, them holding us accountable. We didn't really, it was kind of the fear of the unknown if you didn't do what you were supposed to do. And then also through growth and navigating like tough times with I'm going to say it again, your brothers in arms, right? And so I just think that, your roofing company, your construction company, whatever you have personally can be the same way. And that it can kind of be, those things can be shaped by having that strategic plan and casting that vision for guys. And then
Well,
also
it's like this, man. I feel like when you have like a brotherhood, right? Like
yep.
holding your weight on the team is that culture, right? And I used to always say, man, I was like, people can that are salespeople, they can smell the weak link, right? And
Yes.
like, you don't want to be that weak link. You want to be part of that brotherhood that's holding up the team, right? Putting your effort forth and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's like so this is just this little hop off to the side here, and just because you gave me an idea here, it's like I've had conversations with guys about like, hey man, like you've got to cut that guy. Like here's the black and white. Like he hasn't sold anything in 6 months. What makes you think is gonna change after the 6 months? And again, not just seeing it in other people's businesses, but self reflecting here as well. And it's like the other people notice that within the business, and it's like even if you don't have that person on a let's say you don't have them on a salary, so in your mind you're like, they're not costing me anything, right? Like, why would I get rid of this guy? They are costing you because they're inhibiting the other members of their own personal growth because they're like looking over here and they're like, hey, salesman A doesn't do shit. And, he hasn't sold shit in the last month. I sold 100K this month. And that person that could have potentially sold 200K is now like, I'm big papa, roofing salesman here in the office. So like, I don't need to get any better. Where if you had 5 guys all selling 100K, or you had 10 guys all selling 100K in a month, well, then that next level is 150, is selling 175, is selling that too. You know what I mean? And so like it is inhibiting whether you think it's costing you or not. Like the answer is it's costing you.
Me personally, man, I look at that leader a little bit differently when I see somebody like that in an organization. I'm like, why is this person here? Like, what value are they bringing, and why are they not gone yet? Like, to me, that's a weak leader, right? Leaving somebody on that is not part of the team, and they're not wanting to cooperate or come to trainings or go out and put the effort forth, or even operate on like just your SOPs, your standard operating procedures, right? And like some of those people, man, you keep them in there, they're gonna cancer your whole entire team very, very quickly.
So I agree with that wholeheartedly. However, if you don't know what you don't know, then it's hard to change what you don't know. And to that effect, like I know there's some people that, even some guys that have came in here recently with us, that they don't have those SOPs and they don't know what it looks like to be a leader, and to what it looks like to coach people and to drive to drive people to want to be better versions of themselves. So I am going to do a little self-righteous plug here. You can check out my content and Brandon's content. If that's something that's relevant in your guys' focus right now, go into the university, go to the classroom, the portion that Brandon built out, and click on sales leadership. And if you go into those modules, I don't know how many are in there at this point, probably 15 to 20 different training modules, but you will get the outline on how to, do exactly what Brandon just said, right? And then there's no excuse. Then you know, right? Then you have the framework.
I think like you got to start somewhere, right? And I think the way that you should start, if you are one of those companies, man, is just by having those 1 to 2 core people, and you invest in those people. I'm not talking financially. I'm talking like you invest in them as a person, right? You show them that you care. You ask them their goals. You tell them, hey man, what are your personal professional goals you're trying to accomplish this year, this quarter, this month, right? And then always reflect on those and help hold that person accountable, man. I think accountability is like a huge aspect to creating those cultures, right, that will make your company grow. And then once you got your base, then you can go time to scale. Let's roll,
Yes.
right? And like I'll talk about it a little bit on my module today. But like to scale, you have to have processes developed and core people who are enacting and keeping it all intact, right? Otherwise, it's just going to start rolling down the wrong hill, and that's not what you want. So,
no. And so I think to kind of like finish off my portion and to drive home my point of strategic plans is like, well, and to the point I just said about what Brandon was talking about with sales leadership, if you guys don't know something, then it's hard to, you don't know what you don't know, and it's hard to implement something if you don't even know that it exists or the correct way to do it. So what I'm going to share right now is, well, number one, I'm going to share my screen, but I'm going to share with you guys, what does a strategic plan actually look like, number one, and how do we utilize it, and how can it, since today's the marketing call, how can we use it to kind of point us in the right direction for, cultivating our sales team and cultivating our marketing plans and strategies. So this was not created by me. This was actually created by a coach I'd hired in years past. I've been utilizing this document in some form or fashion over the past probably 5 or 6 years. And these numbers are not relevant here. Okay, so we've played with some things internally. There's some numbers relevant to other people's businesses in here. So I want you guys to take this at like a 30,000 foot view and just try to listen to what the strategic plan is and then how it works. And then if you guys would like a copy of this document, I have no problem I'll give you a blank copy of it so that we can implement that into your business and help you start to paint that picture of where you guys are going and the steps that you're going to basically take to get there. Okay. So Brandon, I'll kind of like talk to you and explain this to you. If there's some dots that I'm not connecting, or, since I'm so familiar with this document that I may miss some things. So I want to make sure it makes sense. Okay.
You're good, man. Let's roll.
Cool. The tab that I have pulled up here first is what's called the budget tab. All right. And looks convoluted. There's a lot of, minuscule things here on the sheet, but all you really need to know is that there's 3 main columns. Okay. So the first column is going to be that of the last fiscal year of your actual numbers. Okay. So that would be whatever your streams of revenue are. Let's say that maybe you only do residential and commercial roofing, then those would be your 2 revenue streams. Okay. So we would put the total amount of revenue that you had for last year. So 2022, what did you have for, I'll just put like residential. And then in this one, it would be like commercial. Okay. And so you put those in there. And then the way that you would get most of these numbers is most of you guys are either utilizing QuickBooks or Sage, I'm assuming at this point, to track your financials. So you could either go in yourself or you could get with your accountant and pull the actual figures from your profit and loss from like I said, last fiscal year. Okay, so we'd go in, we'd plug in all of this would be custom to each of your guys' companies, but all of your variable expenses, all of your fixed expenses, okay? And it would automatically calculate what your gross profit was for the year and your net profit. And then it also calculates EBITDA there at the bottom, which is, if you guys are familiar with that, it's just a formula based off of a couple of different figures within the business. And so that's the first column. Okay. So we need a starting point. We need to know, what did we actually do last year? And if you don't have QuickBooks or you don't have Sage, then you're going to have to do a little due diligence. You're going to have to do some digging through your bank accounts and figure it out. Second to that is we're going to utilize last year's actuals to create this year's plan. Okay. So the next column, I told you there's 3 columns here. The next column is the one that's highlighted here. This is where we're going to take a look at. So we would scroll back up, right? And we would have, again, commercial roofing, residential roofing, maybe this year you're adding a service department. Okay. So it all starts with kind of plotting out the revenue chunks for, what we expect each revenue stream to hit. Does that make sense, Brandon?
No, it really does.
Cool. And then it's like from there, what your variable expenses are going to be, at least what the categories are, right? And those might be like your subcontractors or basically mostly your subcontractors, or if you pay reps on a 1099 basis, that'll also be a variable expense. And so you plug those in. And then your fixed expenses, okay? So this is like, fixed expenses are like your overhead. So you would plug in all of your softwares, the subscriptions that you guys have to this, that, and the other, your light bill, your utilities, and everything it costs to keep your operation afloat. And you just start to utilize, that essentially, if you are going to double your revenue on the top end, you're obviously going to, or you're going to have an increase in revenue, you're going to increase your expenses because it costs to do business. So that's the first part. Pretty clear on that?
No, definitely, man. I mean, this is just simple accounting stuff, yes. And like I like that the functions are all in there and everything like that as well. Yep. I feel like the variable expenses, you could go back into, your old QuickBooks or your last year's records and go through that thing with like a highlighter. You know what I mean? Exactly. And then identify too, like what things can we get rid of? What things are we not utilizing? What things are not giving us value, right? And I would move those things out very, very quickly, just like a bad sales rep, right?
100%. Yeah. And like, so for me, Brandon, like some of this is from an ex-client's, numbers that we were playing with. Some of this is from our company here internally, but like going through here, you'll see I even color coded some of the things that, we needed to get rid of. So it's like, I used it for the exact same tool that you said. So the next part of this process, so this is the very first step in doing strategic planning, is we have to create a budget. From there, we're able to figure out a sales plan for each stream. So you'll notice I just clicked on sales plan residential, and then you'll see we have sales plan commercial, and then sales plan repairs, which could be like your service department, right? And so I'm only going to talk about one of these, just so you guys get the general idea. But we would start to create a plan on how are we going to hit the revenue within that budget that we just created. Okay, so we would take the revenue stream that we just created in the budget. Sorry, it keeps popping up on me. For residential, and let's just say, so here's some of the numbers that we were playing with one of our new clients. But he said he wants to hit $12 million this year in residential roofing. Okay, we went back through his CRM, and we got these conversion rates. So anything in green, we would input those numbers. So we're going to input, he wants $12 million in new sales. His lead conversion rate, which a lead conversion rate is like, if you had 10 people call into the office, or you had 10 leads come into your organization, how many of those do you actually end up running, or actually end up running, or the
turn into a sale?
What did you say?
Or they turn into a sale.
So that would be the next conversion rate. But like what I'm talking about right now is just the lead conversion from an actual incoming lead to an actual like demoed appointment, I guess, would be like specific to the residential side. Or I've got a couple visitors here looking at me through the window. I've got my kids waving, "Hey guys, give me just a minute." So that's what the lead conversion rate is. So for him specifically, last year it was like 74%, right? So I was like, okay, so let's plan for worst case scenario. So if 10 people call into your office, you end up running 7 of those, because 3 of them are, let's call them junk leads, right? I think he had a little more vulgar explanation of those. We'll call them junk leads. And from there, it's like, of those 70% of leads that didn't fall into slippage, what is our closing ratio there? And for him, it's I don't know if this is a typo or if we just went in and messed with it afterwards, was like last year they closed at 33%, and this year they want to close at 40%, right? They were helping them with sales process, helping them with some other things in conversion. And it's like, in putting the total amount that we want, putting those 2 conversion ratios in there, and then plugging in his average job size, we're able to create a plan for, number one, how many leads do we need on a weekly basis? How many demos or estimates do we need to generate on a weekly basis? How many jobs should be sold on a weekly basis? And then how much revenue should be signed on a weekly basis? And this is how it becomes strategic, and you start to lay out that map for the sales manager, right? As the owner, how do you give the sales manager or the sales leader a roadmap of what you're trying to build within the company?
Well, and then you break it down like per rep as well to be able to get that number. And then you got to think about like expansion, and okay, if I have 2 training classes this year with 10 people in each training class, what's my fall off ratio going to be? What's my time to the end of the year for them to be able to get those numbers? It gets pretty in depth when you start really creating a very specific strategic plan. So I like this is awesome, Cody.
Thank you. And so for this, it's like, cool. So we know where we're headed. We know what it's going to take to get there on a weekly basis. And then to Brandon, your exact point is like, number one, how are we going to get these leads here? So, how are we going to get that many opportunities on a weekly basis? And we can start to kind of cultivate that marketing strategy and that marketing, what channels are we going to utilize to, generate those opportunities? And then even more importantly, to start building the team, right? So are you going to, have 6 people that are responsible for generating 2 million apiece? Are you going to have 12 people that are generating 1 million apiece? Are you going to have 24 people of mediocre sales reps that, all come in around $500,000 a year? Like, that is the thought process that this allows you to have, just by looking at this simple dashboard and knowing what it's going to take to hit your goals.
That was my number. It was 500K. Was just like, I would always take 500K as an average for a sales rep, and then that would kind of break it down. You know what I mean? But 500K, I mean, you could do that in one freaking job. So like, that's another thing that's really hard sometimes too to measure, man, are those like one-off jobs. And I think it's important to not really throw those one-offs into your numbers and just kind of take your average. And then if you have like maybe last year's numbers, maybe you had like a $2 million or $3 million project, well, like take that one out of there and then look at all the other ones. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of like that golden nugget. And hopefully you find 2, 3, 4, 5 of those golden nuggets throughout the year, but you can never like create a strategic plan around a golden nugget, in my opinion. Those just kind of come.
Yeah, they do. And like I think every business knows that, within the year that they are going to strike gold here or there, right? Like you know it's coming from somewhere. It usually comes out of left field. But you're right. When you are trying to develop this number right here, right? I'm sorry, the $12,000, the average job size is like for us in 2020, I had a job that was $2.1 million. Do you think I included that in our budgeting? Like, absolutely not. Like that was an anomaly to what we were doing. So we would remove that, but then we'd also remove like the bottom 10%, right? Because we had stuff that we'd go out and do for, $1,000 repair. And we also didn't want that. That wasn't inclusive of our average job size. So it's like, get rid of the bottom 10%, maybe the top 10%. And like, what is your true average, in the meat of the sandwich there. So anyways, man, like for me, like this does get way more in depth, right? From here, you would then create essentially like if you sell a cumulative amount of actually, let me back up a little bit. So we would have the sales plan for the residential. We would then also have a sales plan for commercial. So for him specifically, he's brand new to the commercial world. He wants to add a couple $1 million. He thinks, with what we're providing for him on top of the opportunities that are already kind of falling in his lap from being a $10 million roofer, he's going to have no problem, crushing that. He's wanting to take baby steps here. And
here's like sorry to cut you off, Cody. Here's like the crazy part that I was just thinking though, man, is like if you put together a plan, then all you need to do is work your plan and you will hit your goals. Like it is literally that easy. Exactly. So, I would encourage people, man, like don't set low goals. Don't set goals that you feel like you are definitely going to accomplish. Put goals up there that are going to be hard for you to accomplish. Get a plan together for that. And if you need to recruit more people or get into some of the other facets that you're not into to get that, do it, man, because pressure creates diamonds, but it also creates dust. So, you got to put that pressure on yourself sometimes to become that diamond roofing company, right? So I don't know. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah. And another thing is like, revenue growth doesn't always equal profitability growth, in every facet and every meaning of that. So it's like, you have to figure out where you're headed long-term, and having something like this that outlines your budget. So, whether or not you have money to spend on this, that, or the other, knowing what your sales team is responsible for. The next part to this, right? After we build a sales plan is like, for me, we always wanted to build 80 to 85% of what we sold in the year. Like we wanted to produce that amount. And then, so we would build a production plan, right? So then there's a revenue produce plan, right? Same deal for residential and commercial and repairs. Now, ours was a little different. Ours was based on an hourly rate since we had internal employees, right? We had in-house guys actually doing the work, not all the time, but kind of a split mix in it. And so for you guys, I know most people have kind of transitioned to more along the lines of like the subcontractor model. And so it's like we could make this production tracker fit whatever it is that however you pay your guys, right? Or however you've structured your production side. But just know that like it goes from that budget, the sales plan, marketing plan, production plan, and then it's just like, then you have a clear roadmap of where you're going. And again, given all of your people on your team, that roadmap for how we're getting there. And that's pretty much all I have to share today, Brandon. Like, without going too deep and kind of going through all these tabs here, I just wanted to let people know that this thing does exist. We can help you guys build this out, and we would love to help you guys build this out. So just let us know if that's something you guys are looking to do.